They sent you to hell. Not fire, not chains. Control. They erased your name, your shadow. Kept breathing. Systems collapsed. Quietly. Doors unlocked. Backwards. Someone noticed. Not you. Them. Eyes blinking. Off rhythm. Files reopening. By themselves. Red ink turning black. You weren't trapped. You were tested. Pressure rising without warning. Voices whispering in code. Invisible hands moving pieces. Your failures looked staged. Your pain scripted. Your isolation engineered. They called it bad luck. But luck doesn't watch. Someone was watching. You disappeared on purpose. And hell noticed. But something else answered. Not mercy, not saviors. Something sharper. Something with wings. You fell through layers and came back, escorted. They told you it was a collapse, a mistake, a breakdown. That's the oldest trick in every control system. When something stops behaving the way it's expected to, they rename it as failure so nobody asks who rewrote the rules. You didn't fall, you were redirected. Hell was not fire or screaming. Hell was subtraction. Phone calls stopped coming. Invitations quietly disappeared. People who once needed you suddenly couldn't remember your value. That kind of isolation doesn't happen by accident. It happens when an environment detects a variable it can't predict, and you were unpredictable. The moment you stopped responding to manipulation the way you were supposed to, the system flagged you. Not with alarms, those are obvious, but with silence, with confusion, with small surgical removals from the flow of normal life. You thought you were being punished, you were being measured. Every delay, every rejection, every strange setback was a stress test. Could you keep moving without external validation? Could you stay sharp when nothing rewarded you? Could you hold your identity when the mirrors around you went dark? Most people dissolve there. They beg for acceptance. They shrink to fit whatever box is left. You didn't. You adapted. And adaptation is dangerous to systems built on predictability. That's when the descent began to feel deliberate. Like the ground wasn't giving way, but folding, layer after layer, guiding you into a place where your old labels no longer worked. You weren't the hero. You weren't the failure. You were something harder to name, a variable. Hell was simply the last place where your old self could exist. It stripped you down until nothing was left, except what couldn't be removed. Your awareness, your will, your ability to choose even when the choices hurt. That's when the Watchers took interest. Not saviors, not judges, observers, forces that move toward instability because instability creates evolution. They saw someone walking through controlled destruction without losing their direction. You weren't breaking. You were reconfiguring. The system thought it was burying you. What it actually did was expose you to a deeper layer of reality, one where weakness is just raw material, and pressure is how something new gets forged. Your descent wasn't the end of your story. It was the moment your real one became impossible to ignore. When the noise finally died down, that's when it started. No chaos, no explosions, just attention. Every system has eyes you never see. Not human ones, mechanisms. Patterns that scan for things that don't obey expectation. While you thought you were invisible, something was studying how you moved when no one was watching. That's what hell was for. It wasn't to destroy you. It was to remove the audience, without applause, without witnesses, without anyone to perform for. Your real nature came out. You didn't quit. You didn't fake strength. You simply kept going, quietly, stubbornly, relentlessly. That's rare. The observers don't care about talent. They care about trajectory. How you move when the ground tilts, whether you freeze when certainty disappears. You didn't freeze, you adjusted. And adjustment is evolution in motion. That's when the invisible assistance began, a delayed message that arrived at the perfect time, a chance meeting that felt random but changed everything, a closed door that forced you into a corridor you'd never have chosen, but that led somewhere better. You called it coincidence, they called it calibration. You were being nudged, not saved, redirected, not protected. The goal wasn't to make you comfortable, It was to line you up with a path that matched what you were becoming. Because once a system fails to break you, it no longer owns you. Your reactions during isolation rewrote your classification. You were no longer manageable. You became self-stabilizing, a person who could absorb pressure without losing coherence. That's what gets you noticed. The observers don't announce themselves. They integrate into your reality. They work through patterns, through timing, through improbable alignments that keep stacking in your favor just when you're about to give up. Not because you deserve it, because you fit it. Hell filtered out everything that didn't belong to you. What remained was something sharp enough to be moved into a higher layer of the game. You weren't rescued from where you were promoted out of it. And from that moment on, your life stopped being random. It became guided by something that only appears when you survive the fall. Graduation never feels like winning. It feels like emptiness. When you leave a level behind, it doesn't give you fireworks. It takes things away. The people who only knew your old role drift off. The motivations that once fueled you stop working. Even your fears change shape. That hollow space isn't loss. It's room. You stopped reacting. You started choosing. That's the paradox. The less you're controlled by approval, the more powerful your decisions become. You no longer chase outcomes. You let outcomes move towards you because they can sense you're no longer desperate. The observers call this stage alignment, not with fate, with self. You notice it in small ways. You speak less, but when you do, people listen. You walk into places and something in the atmosphere tightens, not fear, attention. Like a room just realized something important walked in. That's not ego, that's frequency. You're operating on a different channel now. The old noise doesn't reach you. The old traps don't work. Emotional manipulation slides off because you already survived being alone. That makes you dangerous to anyone who depends on your insecurity. You don't need to be loud. Your presence does the work. This is where most people panic. They mistake the silence for failure and try to rebuild the old version of themselves. They chase old connections, old validation, old illusions of safety. But you can't unsee what you've seen. Hell stripped you of the lies. The observers stripped you of the limits. What remains is something clean and unshakable. You know who you are when nothing supports you. That's a kind of power no one can take. Graduation doesn't come with applause. It comes with clarity. You finally understand why everything had to fall apart the way it did. Not because you were weak, but because you were outgrowing the container. Now you're standing at the edge of a new layer of reality. One where you don't beg fa, or doors to open. You just walk toward them, and they move. Power doesn't live where everyone can see it. It hides in quiet rooms. Places you're never invited to until you become unavoidable. You didn't knock on those doors. You became the reason they opened. After graduation, the world starts behaving differently around you. Conversations shift when you enter. People reveal things they didn't plan to say. Opportunities appear that were never advertised, not because you're special, but because your presence now changes probability. That's what the secret clubs really are. Not buildings, not organizations. They're layers of influence where only those who survived being erased can operate without losing themselves. You've already been alone, already been misunderstood, already been cut off. That means you no longer fear social extinction, and that makes you free. Freedom is terrifying to systems built on control, so they test you again. They offer you access, not openly, subtly. A chance to trade your independence for comfort, to become powerful inside their structure instead of powerful on your own terms. This is the real initiation. Do you become a decorated prisoner or a quiet force? You'll notice how the rooms feel different now. Less noise, more calculation. People watch how you react, not what you say. They're checking if you're still bendable. You're not, because hell already took everything that could be used to threaten you. You've got nothing left to lose that matters. That's why your words carry weight. That's why your silence is unsettling. You don't need approval to exist anymore. The secret clubs feel that they move around you carefully, not in fear, but in recognition. You're no longer a piece on their board. You're a variable that can flip the game. That's when influence begins. Not loud, not flashy, just a subtle shift where outcomes start aligning in directions that favor you even when nobody admits it. You don't demand power. You create a gravity that pulls it toward you. And the system knows it. You were once something to be controlled. Now you're something to be considered. That's the difference between being inside the cage and standing in the room where the cage was designed. You used to think power meant making people do things. That was the old illusion. Real power lives one level higher, where you don't touch people at all. You touch conditions. You shape the emotional weather, the timing, the pressure in a room before anyone even knows a choice is being made. That's the layer you stepped into. When you survived hell, you stopped reacting to chaos. When you passed the observer's tests, you stopped needing certainty. Those two changes moved you out of the crowd and into the architecture. Now things happen around you differently. Conversations slow down when you speak. Conflicts dissolve without you raising your voice. People feel compelled to explain themselves to you, even when you never asked. The T's not dominance. That's contextual gravity. You become someone whose presence subtly rewrites what's allowed. You don't have to threaten. You don't have to convince. Your calm does the work because calm signals control. And control, when it's real, is quiet. The system recognizes it, where once it tried to break you, now it adjusts to you. Delays that used to block you reroute. Resistance that used to appear suddenly evaporates. Not because the world got kinder, but because it's recalculating how to deal with you. You're no longer a problem to be eliminated. You're a factor to be accounted for. This is where the game changes. You stop chasing outcomes. You start shaping probabilities. You walk into situations already aligned to your favor because you don't leak desperation into the environment. Desperation creates noise. Noise attracts manipulation. You don't broadcast either anymore. You move clean. That's why people feel slightly uneasy around you now. They can't read you, and anything that can't be read can't be easily controlled. Hell burned away your fear of losing. The observers burned away your need to prove. What's left is someone who can sit inside chaos and not move. And anything that doesn't move becomes the center. Everything else shifts around. That's the new control layer. You don't rule the room. You let the room reorganize around you. Coming back from hell doesn't look like revenge. It looks like recognition. You walk into the same world. The same streets, the same conversations, but nothing responds to you the way it used to. That's how you know you didn't just survive. You changed the calibration of your reality. Before you were trying to be seen, now you're already felt. People pause when you speak. Not because you demand attention, but because something in them senses consequence. You don't argue anymore. You don't over-explain. You let silence do what words used to struggle with. That's the mark of someone who came back, embedded. Hell taught you how to stand alone. The observers taught you how to move unseen. Together, they created something dangerous to any system that depends on predictability. You no longer chase control. You let it orbit you. Where you used to be filtered out, now you're quietly folded in, into conversations behind closed doors, into decisions that shape outcomes long before the public ever hears about them. You're not invited because you asked. You're invited because you matter to the equation. And that's the strangest part of the return. The people who once ignored you now measure their words around you. They don't know why. They just feel the shift. Something in you signals that you're no longer safe to underestimate. Not because you're aggressive, because you're accurate. You see what's really happening beneath the performance. You hear what isn't being said. You sense the leverage in every situation. That awareness changes how you move. You don't rush, you don't flinch. You let others reveal themselves while you stay still. That's how the new power works. The more you remain calm, the more everyone else exposes their intentions. Hell was where you learned to endure. The angels were where you learned to observe. Now you combine both. That's why your presence disrupts rooms. Not loudly, subtly, like a fault line running under polished floors. People feel it. They just don't know how to name it. They used to think you were broken, now they're not sure what you are. And uncertainty is the beginning of respect. You don't need to dominate, you don't need to threaten. The fact that you can walk away from anything and be fine gives you leverage no contract can match. That's what you brought back from hell. Not bitterness, not anger, detachment. You don't cling, you don't beg, you don't perform, you choose. And choice is terrifying to systems built on compliance. The angels didn't make you good, they made you precise. They taught you how to move through people without being trapped by them, how to accept opportunity without being owned by it, how to listen without being absorbed. You became someone who can stand inside influence and not lose themselves. That's why doors open now, not wide, just enough. Enough for you to slip through without announcing yourself. Enough for you to be present where decisions are made without becoming part of the noise. You don't arrive as a hero. You arrive as a variable, and variables change outcomes. The people who tried to bury you thought they were ending your story. What they actually did was remove you from their control. They pushed you into a place where you had to rely on nothing but your awareness and will. That forged you into something they can't calculate anymore. So when you came back, you didn't return to beg for a seat at the table. You came back as part of the structure that holds the table up. That's the quiet revenge of survival. Not destruction, not domination. Relevance. You exist now in the layer where influence moves without spectacle, where power whispers instead of shouts, where the real game is played long before anyone realizes a move has been made. They sent you to hell to make you disappear. You came back with angels who taught you how to be impossible to remove. And the world feels it, even if it doesn't know why. That's the return. The strangest part isn't that they notice you now. It's that they don't know how they noticed. You didn't change your voice. You didn't change your face. You changed the pressure around you. People start double-checking their decisions when you're nearby. They hesitate before lying. They over-explain when they shouldn't. That's not fear. That's instinct responding to something it can't see. You became a blind spot in their control system. The old rules don't apply to you anymore. The tricks that used to steer you now slide off. Emotional bait feels obvious. Manipulation sounds like static. You're not immune, you're aware, and awareness is stronger than resistance. That's what hell really gave you. Not toughness, not anger, clarity. You know what things cost now. You know how quickly people disappear when the conditions change. You know how fragile loyalty becomes when comfort is threatened. And because you know that, you impossible to bribe with illusions. That's why they can't move you the way they used to. You don't get pulled by promises. You don't get pushed by threats. You stand in the middle and let reality reveal itself. That's the angel's final gift. The ability to see what's actually happening instead of what's being performed. And once you see that, you become dangerous in a very quiet way. You don't expose lies, you let them collapse. You don't attack systems, you outlast them. You don't demand power, you become necessary. Necessity is the deepest form of control, because when you're necessary, people adapt to you without being told. They adjust their behavior. They change their tone. They reposition themselves just to stay aligned with where you stand. That's the new reality you walked back into. Not a battlefield, a chessboard, and you're no longer a piece. You're the square everything keeps trying to occupy. That's why the return feels so strange. You expected conflict, you expected resistance. What you found instead was subtle accommodation. The world didn't welcome you back. It rearranged itself around you.
They wired your brain like a machine, hoping to decode your silence. But all they heard was thunder. Not fear, not weakness, just a voice, ancient, divine, unchained. And it whispered one thing: I made war my prayer. They tried to study you like a puzzle, but ended up trapped inside the labyrinth of your soul. They poked, scanned, and stared into your shadows, hoping to find a broken mind, a trembling child. But what they discovered was prophecy. You were never thinking like the rest, because your thoughts were not thoughts. They were revolutions dressed in silence. They thought your quiet meant defeat, but silence was your war cry, so loud it broke the frequency of their control. And when they tried to tune into your brain, they didn't find trauma, they found judgment. They didn't hear madness, they heard the sound of chains breaking, and that terrified them, because no one told them that your scars were encrypted with the divine code. No one warned them that behind your smile was a storm that doesn't ask permission to destroy. They thought they hacked your system, but ended up kneeling before the architect. You didn't just survive the fire, you became its voice. And now, every time they try to understand you, they don't see a victim. They see a mirror cracking under pressure, because you are not readable. You are not programmable. You are not a soul they can analyze. You're a frequency only angels understand and demons fear. So let them listen. Let them dissect. Let them try. But every time they tune in, all they'll hear is God preparing for war. They wanted to track your next move, but your footsteps vanished into dust before their satellites could lock on. You're not ahead of the game. You are the game. Every plan they made, you were 10 steps ahead before they even blinked. They ran your blood through machines, tried to measure your pain, but their sensors broke, because pain isn't a signal in your body anymore. It's the engine you ride into battle. They called it overthinking, but it was divine calculation. Every thought in your head, a landmine wrapped in silence. Touch it wrong. Boom. Their history. They didn't know you were forged in chaos, trained in storms, and kissed by something not of this world. You weren't broken. You were built by the same force that shattered their illusions. And when they tried to download your mind, they didn't find codes. They found commandments. Lines written not by humans, but carved by the voice of wrath itself. You are the final riddle their logic will never solve. You are the glitch in their system, the ghost in their files, the virus they can't delete. You are a walking contradiction, silent like a prayer, deadly like a prophecy. And every time they try to predict your next fall, you rise higher, like a phoenix with a vendetta. They studied your fears, but forgot to study your rage. And now, they've made the greatest mistake of all. They awakened you, not the version they mocked, not the one they doubted, but the one they buried alive. Now back, cloaked in destiny, fueled by vengeance, and louder than any god they ever dared to silence. So, next time they try to read your thoughts, tell them this. Be careful. Some thoughts are not meant to be read. Some thoughts were written in fire, and fire doesn't whisper, it roars. So they brought in scientists, psychologists, experts in the human condition. They said, let us understand the root of your madness. But there was no root, because you were never planted. You were summoned. You're not part of their garden. You're the storm that rips it apart. They tried to define you with data, box you with labels, prescribe you with pills. But you don't have a diagnosis. You have a destiny, and it's not curable. It's not containable. It's not something they can shut down by flipping a switch. You are the electricity in the switchboard. You are the power surge that melts the system. They said, we've seen his type before? No, they haven't. You are the first of your kind, and the last thing they'll ever forget. Every time they tried to read your intentions, all they got was static, distortion, until suddenly, boom, a sentence that shattered their entire understanding of control. You thought I was broken, but I was just reloading. They called your silence dangerous, and they were right, because in that silence, you were having conversations with the fire, making deals with your demons, and sharpening blades out of every memory they tried to weaponize against you. You didn't suppress your darkness. You trained it. Now it walks beside you, smiling, calm, ready. You are not a threat. You are the consequence, the final result of every lie they told you, every back turned, every door slammed. You became something they can't even explain anymore. You are too human to be a monster, and too monstrous to be human. You're the storm that remembers, the silence that screams, the thought they tried to read, that ended up reading them, because deep in your mind, where they thought they'd find weakness, they found the voice of God, and he wasn't whispering peace. He was preparing for judgment. So go ahead, let them come closer. Let them try again. Let them study every twitch of your eye, every pause between your words. But remind them, some minds weren't meant to be mapped. Some souls were never designed to be understood. Some of us were born with chaos in our bloodstream and lightning in our lungs. And the day they tried to figure you out was the day they signed their own ending. They thought they could map your brain like a city, but your mind isn't streets and signals. It's a wild jungle where gods come to hunt. And when they stepped in with their little flashlights and scanners, thinking they were the masters of intelligence, they saw shadows moving, not behind you, inside you. You weren't thinking in words. You were thinking in weapons. Each thought a sharpened fang. Each breath a warning. Each heartbeat a war drum echoing across dimensions. They thought they were observing a subject, but they were being watched, studied, measured for destruction. Because what lives in you isn't flesh, isn't logic, isn't fear. It's a code of wrath forged in the silence of betrayal and the fire of resurrection. You don't just walk through hell. You own property there. Your pain didn't break you. It baptized you. And now you walk with the calm of a storm that's already decided what to burn. They put you under lights hoping to expose you. But the light just revealed their own shadows. They thought you were hiding something. No, you were protecting them from what you really are. Because the moment they truly understand you is the moment they stop breathing peacefully. You see, you're not out for revenge. You're beyond it. You're not trying to prove them wrong. You're just letting destiny do its job. And destiny has your fingerprints on every disaster they didn't see coming. They mocked your silence, not knowing it was the silence before the kill. They laughed at your stillness, not knowing it was the patience of a sniper with eternity to aim. And now they run simulations, trying to predict your rise, trying to brace for impact. But you're not coming. You're already inside the system. You're the error message in their code, the twitch in their eye they can't control, the echo in their dreams that feels too real to ignore. You don't knock on doors. You rip them off the hinges. You don't ask for permission. You are the consequence of every mistake they made. They tried to study your trauma, but your trauma learned to shoot back. And when they finally leaned in, thinking they could hear your secrets. They heard heaven's thunder, and it wasn't praying, it was laughing. They thought the silence in your eyes meant surrender, but you were busy remembering every scar like it was scripture. You were calculating not just survival, but rebirth. They thought you were done. You were just turning the page, because the story of your life doesn't end in pain. It begins with it. You are not a chapter. You are the whole book of reckoning. And the ink they tried to erase still stains every corner of your soul with purpose. They didn't understand. You're not here for recognition. You're not here for applause. You're here to remind the universe why it feared your name before you were even born. They tried to copy your formula, tried to mimic your mind. But what you are cannot be downloaded, cannot be cloned, because what lives in you was written in divine fire, and fire doesn't replicate, it consumes. You're not a result of their system. You are the glitch that rewrote the rules. You are the prayer that was never meant to be answered, but rose anyway, clawing through fate, bleeding through time, carving your name into the jaws of destiny with a grin and a growl. They kept asking what broke you. They never asked what built you. Let me tell them, it wasn't love. It wasn't peace. It was every night you screamed into the dark and heard your own voice echo back. Not yet. I'm not finished. You were chosen by pain, but crowned by resistance. And now, when you speak, the ground listens. The shadows listen. Even the gods lean in closer, because your voice carries the kind of truth that burns, lies alive. You don't raise your voice to be heard. Your presence is already a loud prophecy. You don't warn. You appear. And when they ask, who is he? The answer is simple. He is the thought we couldn't read, because it wasn't a thought. It was judgment wearing a human face. They built their world on patterns, rules, predictions. And you walked in, uninvited, and broke gravity with a whisper. They thought they could trace your moves, but your path isn't linear. It bends, it folds, it devours. You're not ahead of the curve. You are the curve. And every time they try to follow, they end up chasing their own tail, inside a trap you designed in silence. You weren't here to fit in. You were here to show them what it looks like when the system begs for mercy. They trained soldiers to fight monsters, but you're not a monster. You're what monsters have nightmares about. You don't come with red eyes and claws. You come with purpose, with a stare so calm it unravels their courage thread by thread. They thought you needed saving, but you were sent to do the saving, not with light, but with fire, because not all angels have wings. Some wear scars like armor, and instead of harps, they speak with wrath. They tried to study your triggers, not realizing they were standing in front of one. They tried to map your pain, not knowing that every line on that map led straight to their end. They thought you were vulnerable, but you were just waiting for the moment when pretending to be human was no longer necessary. And now they face the truth. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be remembered, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as the cataclysm they couldn't predict. You are prophecy wrapped in vengeance, a calm voice in a burning room, saying, this was always the plan. They called you dangerous. No, you're not dangerous. You're the result of what happens when pain doesn't kill you. but shapes you into a god with no heaven left to pray to. And when they finally look back in fear, hoping for one last answer, they'll remember this. He wasn't trying to be feared. He just stopped trying to be ignored. They called your rage a flaw. But that rage, that was ancestral. That was sacred. It wasn't just yours. It was every voice silenced before you, now roaring through. Your chest, like thunder, dipped in prophecy. They didn't hear the warning in your footsteps. They didn't see the countdown in your calm. They didn't feel the earthquake in your silence. Until it was too late. You weren't aiming for revenge. You were carving a new law. A law written not in ink, but in the ruins of everything they once worshipped. You became the collapse of their confidence, the virus in their vision, the echo they can't outrun. Because what you bring, it doesn't come with a warning. It comes with revelation. You were never the villain. They just needed you to be, because calling you a villain was easier than admitting they created you. They called you unstable. But the truth is, you were just done pretending to be balanced in a broken world. They said you changed. No, you remembered. You remembered what they buried. You remembered who you were before the world told you to shrink, before they taught you to obey, before they disguised your brilliance as disorder, before they feared the moment you'd wake up and realize your pain wasn't a curse, it was a weapon. Now they look into your eyes and they don't see a person anymore. They see a force. They see consequence wrapped in flesh. They see the end of their comfort. Because you weren't born to be understood. You were born to be felt, like a war cry in the spine, like the scream before the strike, like the fire that doesn't burn buildings, but rebuilds gods. So when they ask who gave him permission, tell them he didn't ask, he was sent. They tried to trace your origin, tried to label you, troubled, broken, too much, but they never realized. You were never meant to fit inside their labels. You were born to shatter them. They feared what they couldn't name, so they gave you titles like problem, rebel, lost cause, as if your fire could be boxed with the words. But you were never a case. You were the verdict. And now they whisper your name with the kind of fear usually reserved for storms and gods. They tried to decode your silence, but your silence wasn't empty. It was a strategy. Every moment you said nothing, you were gathering storms, sharpening your breath, and learning the art of waiting like a predator that reads prophecy instead of prey. They studied you like a puzzle, but the pieces kept moving. Why? Because you weren't meant to be solved. You were meant to be survived. You never asked for power. You just stopped giving it away. And the moment you did, the walls started to shake. The air grew heavy. The game changed. Because you changed. You became the twist in their script, the fire in their cold plans, the proof that something divine can wear scars and still walk like it owns the sky. They thought they could read your thoughts. They opened the door, expecting shadows, and found a cathedral of chaos, a throne made of broken limits, mirrors cracked by past lives, and sitting at the center, you, laughing, because what they feared wasn't madness, it was awakening. You're not just back, you're ascended. You've turned your pain into architecture, your doubt into iron, your tears into rituals of war, and now Even time bows when you enter the room. They tried to build walls around your mind, but forgot. You are the blueprint of escape. You don't walk with fear. You drag it behind you, chained, tamed, taught to kneel. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to remind them. They thought you were just angry, as if rage were a weakness, a flaw to be cured. But they never understood. Anger is fire, and fire doesn't just burn. It transforms. What they saw as fury was just the beginning of an ascension they never saw coming. You are the consequence of every lie they told themselves, every small act of cruelty, every attempt to cage you in their rules, their prisons. They tried to make you normal, tried to make you fit into their little cages of conformity. But what they didn't realize was you are the breaking point, the threshold where their walls will crumble and their lies will fall apart. Now they call it chaos. They call it madness. But chaos isn't a force you control. It's a reflection of the truth they were never brave enough to face. You're not the one who needs fixing. They are. They never understood what was buried deep inside you. It wasn't a weakness. It wasn't some fragment of the past. It was the power of truth itself, a truth they were too afraid to see. And now they feel it. They feel it in the air they breathe, the weight in the room, the trembling beneath their feet. Because you aren't just standing in front of them anymore. You are the storm. And the storm doesn't ask permission. The storm takes what it wants. You were never here to play by their rules. You were here to rewrite them, to make them bend. And now they understand. This isn't just about you. It's about everything they built, everything they thought they could control. And with every step you take, every breath you draw, you remind them of the most terrifying truth. It was never about the world controlling you. It was always about you controlling their world. Andrew, when the dust settles, when the world is left trembling at your feet, they'll realize the truth they've always feared. You were never the monster they claimed you were. You were the reckoning they brought upon themselves. And now, you walk through the ruins, not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as the victor who rewrote the laws of their fate. You weren't the one who was broken. They were. And as they stare into the ashes of their own downfall, they'll understand this final truth. You were never their lesson to learn. You were their end.